Hello, my name is Benji and welcome to Dice vs Cards. Today we continue our look at Arkham Horror, the card game. We've covered deck building and investigator classes in previous videos, but today we bring you 10 tips for beginners to improve your card slinging skills once you've got to the table. Plus, you never know, even more seasoned players might get something out of this. So here we go, old gods, get ready to get punched in the tentacles. Number 1. Remember that the turn sequence always stays the same. The agenda and the encounter decks do their thing, then you as investigators do your thing, and finally enemies do their thing. But that also translates to you doing your thing, and then all of the bad things happen before you get to go again. My point is, make sure you always leave yourself an action or two, which is even more important when you're playing solo, before you open yourself to the threat of something else bad happening. In other words, don't travel to a new location, try not to advance the act deck, or expose yourself to anything that you can't react to near the end of your turn. Number 2. When taking skill tests of any kind, remember the +2 rule. What that means is that you want the skill that you're testing to be 2 or more greater than the target number. This will ensure an approximate 3 in 4 chance of succeeding in the test at the start of a campaign on standard difficulty. The sweet spot for most tests will be in the region of 5, but that can still vary somewhat. Just know that you're going to lose tests, so do not try and overinvest in a lost cause by using precious resources or cards on a test that has a low probability of success, and one that you might reasonably be able to endure. Such as taking damage or horror when you have lots of health and sanity to play with. Number 3. Learn to mulligan aggressively. You may think that every single card in your deck is too precious to discard, but at the start of the game it's important you're ready to race out of the blocks. So think of 3 key things. Is this a card I can reliably play, and will it be useful to me early doors? Most scenarios will ease you in, but if you draw the wrong encounter card or enter the wrong location, you could be immediately facing a difficult enemy that you need to deal with. By extension to that point, make sure you can pay for everything you want to do on your first couple of turns, because wasting actions on gaining resources is highly inefficient. And finally, and somewhat obviously, don't hold on to cards that you won't realistically need in the first portion of the game. Cards that will heal you, or cards that do damage to multiple enemies, that sort of thing. Number 4. Pick your battles. You don't have to kill every enemy. If a non-hunter enemy is sitting at a location you've already emptied of clues and you're winning the race against the agenda deck, just leave it be. You don't have to open every door and get every clue. Deal with the clear and present priority of turning the page on the act deck, and make sure you aim for just enough clues to get you to the end. And I've already touched on this, but you don't have to deal with every treachery that gets drawn. Weigh up the cost of likely success with the severity of failure and act accordingly. Number 5 is a concept that bleeds somewhat into deck building principles, but it applies whilst you're playing as well, and should put you in an appropriately focused mindset to succeed. So as a general rule, you want to treat one action as greater than one card in hand, which in turn is greater than one resource at your disposal. So if given those 3 options at any given time, take a free action any day of the week, but then consider a card with its inherent ability and skill icons as marginally greater than a resource. Yes, it's true that cards need resources and vice versa, but without cards you're just a rich person with nothing to spend your dough on. Number 6. Do not be afraid to use key cards as skill boosts. We've all been there. You built this deck just to play one card so it can do its awesome thing. But sometimes, just sometimes, the consequence of failure will be so dire that you must dig deep and let that card go. Living to fight another day is better than holding on to that 45 Thompson you can't afford to play anyway, and that can mean the difference between success and failure. Number 7. You're often better to assume the worst. Have a card you know you're going to need because it's fantastic at dealing with enemies or gathering clues, then play it. Don't wait for the bad thing to happen and then be scrambling around for enough actions to deal with it. Always be prepared. Now of course this somewhat flies in the face of everything I've been espousing about dealing with the clear and present danger, but if you know you'll need to deal with enemies and find a way to pick up clues throughout a scenario, and as long as it doesn't contravene previous advice about when to take certain actions, then play that thing, goddammit. Number 8. Use everything efficiently. Not only is this a game about action economy, it's also about efficiency. Specifically, I mean min-maxing your application of damage to enemies. So in other words, if you've got a nifty weapon that ensures you can do +1 or even +2 damage, then don't be wasting it on a low combat enemy with only 1 health left. Punch the goat in the face instead. Similarly, if you're facing a variable consequence treachery that you're set to lose by 1 point on average, take the hit instead of overinvesting in a success that was destined to be a pretty painless failure in the first place. Number 9. Think of everything as a resource, not just those tokens you use to pay for cards, but also your health and your sanity. So long as you have at least one of often both of them, you can still win the game. The resources you invested in stopping a treachery failure may have been better spent on a key asset, so take the hit, and by extension your allies can be useful at doing this as well. If they no longer bring a pertinent or actual benefit to the game state, then throw them under a gruesome monster's teeth and claws. The same can be said of actions and cards. They're all just resources with inherently different values at different times of the game. So what, pray tell, is the practical benefit of adopting this mindset? Well, first and foremost, this crystallises what is most important in any given scenario. Completing the act before the agenda deck runs its course. How you do that will mean the same thing at the end. There are no real points for style and panache, just the completion of objectives and staying alive. And finally, number 10. This is a game of forward motion. We've talked about preparedness and ensuring you have the right tools at your disposal at any given time. But if you belabour this point for too many actions, you're just begging to be behind the curve. I say this time and time again, you are in a race playing Arkham Horror. It's either you and the act deck or the old gods and the agenda deck. It's tempting to want everything just so. A sweet weapon in one hand, a handy flashlight in the other, some useful skill icons in hand, and some resources at your disposal. But sometimes you gotta just keep moving. Manage risk as best you can and let the chaos bag and fate decide the rest. So there you have it, 10 ways to make you a better Arkham Horror card gamer. Yes, there's been a little bit of overlap, but I really do hope you've found some, if not all of this guide useful. However, that's it from me. I'll see you next time.